The regular meeting of the Oakley Planning Commission is called to order. I'll begin with roll call. Vice Chair Price. Here. Commissioner Harvey. Commissioner Oliveros. Here. And I am Chair Verduzco, present. Commissioner Chuco is absent tonight. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able to and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we will move on to item number 2, public comments. At this time, public comments will be heard for items not on the agenda. I do not have public speaker cards submitted. To submit a public speaker comment, please complete a speaker card located in the lobby. Submit to the city clerk. The time limit to speak is 3 minutes. The time limit is monitored by the timer located in front of the chair's seat. When 1 minute remains on the timer, it will beep once and the light will turn yellow as a reminder to complete comments before your time expires. Now we move on to the consent calendar. Agenda item number 3. Agenda item 3.1 is to approve minutes from the regular Planning Commission meeting held April 1st, 2025. There are no public comments received for this. Is there any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Have a first.
I second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Therefore, I will call for a vote. All in favor of approving agenda item 3.0 and approval of minutes of the regular Planning Commission meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed or abstention. The motion passes. All right, next we will move on to public hearings. Item 4.1, adoption of a resolution recommending the City Council adopt the City of Oakley Climate Action Plan 2025. Mr. Cortez.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Planning Commissioners. The next item on tonight's agenda is the City of Oakley's Climate Action Plan 2025. In late 2023, City Council voluntarily chose to pursue the adoption of a Climate Action Plan and requested staff initiate the preparation of the document. The adoption of the Climate Action Plan would comply with the City of Oakley's General Plan Program 6.2.b, which states, adopt and implement a climate action plan by 2025 that complies with state greenhouse gas emission targets, and policy 6.2.4, which aims to implement a plan to support efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by improving energy efficiency in city facilities, new developments through adopting a climate action plan and engaging the community in energy awareness and reduction. The city's project leads and its consultant partner, the Cumming Group, have prepared the climate action plan for adoption after a 14-month process that involved public workshops, a joint work session, and a public comment period on the draft climate action plan. During the comment period, staff received a variety of comments ranging from wordsmithing to comments on the future funding dedication and plan effectiveness. Comments were reviewed and implemented throughout the document where applicable. A comment register is attached to the report as attachment 3. The final document provides a roadmap to achieve the city's climate goals and to eliminate emissions from city operations by 2040 and to neutralize community-wide emissions by 2045. Adoption of the Climate Action Plan is a great first step, but the work does not end after adoption. Within a year of adoption, staff will return to the City Council for direction on priority actions and implementation. Tonight, we have a representative from the Cumming Group who is here tonight to present the Climate Action Plan and expand on the process that has occurred these past 14 months. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to bring up Cassidy with the Coming Group, and she'll walk you through the next steps.
Good evening, Cassidy.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. So today I'm here to speak to you a little bit more about the climate action process and then give you a broad overview of what's included in the climate action plan. Oops, sorry, my pen is escaping. So just a broad overview about the climate action plan. So as Jose mentioned, it's a roadmap that lays out Oakley's plan to reduce both municipal and community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. And we also took a look at climate adaptation and resilience to ensure that any impacts of climate change are mitigated across all of the city's assets as well as community-wide. We ensured that the climate action plan is in alignment with the California emissions target of statewide neutrality by 2045, as well as Oakley's city emissions targets that include carbon neutrality for city operations by 2040 and community-wide carbon neutrality by 2045. As well as was already mentioned, as the Oakley strategic plan lays out, that it included an objective to establish greenhouse gas emissions goals inclusive of a climate action plan that complies with state targets. So the components that you'll see in the Climate Action Plan, or CAP, include a greenhouse gas emissions analysis. So that means that we took a look at the sources of greenhouse gas emissions, both specifically for city activity and assets, and then also community-wide, so the city of Oakley as a whole. We also conducted a climate vulnerability and risk assessment to look at the assets that the city has, any areas or infrastructure that's most at risk in the case of a climate emergency or changing climate. Conducted various community engagement efforts, and also put together mitigation and adaptation strategies that all culminated in the Climate Action Plan. So here you'll see an overview of the process. We started back in April 2024, starting with our existing conditions assessment. So that included conducting the greenhouse gas emissions inventories as well as a vulnerability assessment. In November, we held our first public workshop. And the goal of that workshop was really to hear about the priorities and concerns that the community had in terms of what would be addressed in the Climate Action Plan. From there, we moved on to our strategy and plan development and drafted the Climate Action Plan. And then recently, about 6 weeks ago, we returned to Oakley, had our second public workshop where members of the public could come, provide more direct feedback on the Climate Action Plan itself, and then also held a public comment period that was open from March through April, again, where community members could write in and provide their feedback on the Climate Action Plan. And then that brings us to today, where we have drafted the final Climate Action Plan for the city. A few highlights from our community engagement sessions. Over the 2 sessions that we held, we had over 60 attendees, and we had nearly 100 unique comments from the public throughout the entire planning process. It was very important to us that the feedback that we received was incorporated and translated directly into the Climate Action Plan. So here you'll see from our first workshop, we had an activity where folks could kind of draw their perfect future climate resilient and sustainable Oakley. And then we translated those ideas into specific actions. So as you'll see in the yellow square, the very top, we heard a lot of feedback about installing renewable energy, such as solar power. And so that was translated into B 2.1 section of the Climate Action Plan, which includes a call to action to install 1 megawatt of new solar voltaic capacity in the city. And then if you look to the blue square, that's in the adaptation and resilience. So we heard a lot about using nature-based strategies in the Climate Action Plan for climate resilience, and so you'll see that translated as well. And so I want to talk a bit about the few categories in the Climate Action Plan roadmap. We bucketed each of the goals into different categories. So the first is governance and leadership. This is really covering what the city can do, in terms of the leaders of the community. On the screen, you will see the broad goals, and then within the document, you will also see targets and specific action items. They're quite lengthy, so I'm just going to go over a few today. But under governance and leadership, a few of the action items include developing sustainability goals and priorities for each city department, issuing regular CAP progress and implementation reports, and then convening working groups to work on climate action with both community-based organizations as well as other local agencies such as Diablo Water District. Another big area that we wanted to focus on is buildings and energy, as when we conducted the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, buildings were a very large portion of greenhouse gas emissions, as well as energy use. So focusing on buildings and energy, we wanted to look at becoming more efficient and also increasing renewable energy resources. So some of the action items include performing energy benchmarks across the city's buildings, also enrolling remaining city accounts into MCE's 100% renewable options. Additionally, developing and providing resources for residents, both renters and homeowners, about energy efficiency steps that they could take that could be done in collaboration with MCE or PG&E, and establishing energy and water efficiency requirements for new construction in Oakley. Another large bucket of emissions was transportation and land use. And again, this was both on the municipal side and the community-wide side. Cars put out a lot of emissions, so that is regular to see. And so we really wanted to focus on both promoting other forms of mobility and also transitioning vehicles to cleaner vehicles and zero emissions. So some of the actions include implementing mobility projects and street enhancements that encourage alternative forms of mobility, such as walking, taking a scooter, biking, etc. Amplifying other programs that are offered to residents, such as the Contra Costa Transportation Authority's e-bike rebate program. Working with the local transit agencies to expand both service areas and service frequency. Establishing EV charger incentives across the city, and transitioning the city fleet to zero emissions vehicles. And then lastly, we have our adaptation and resilience bucket that is quite broad, but includes many actions, including coordinating with other agencies on sea level rise adaptation and measures, collaborating with community-based organizations and other local agencies or state agencies to develop programs that identify and support any vulnerable individuals during climate emergencies. And then actions such as mapping vulnerable transportation routes and designating alternatives in case of emergency, especially for those critical routes. And as we look to implementation, as you look through the document as well, you'll see that we have also categorized them based on the level of impact for emissions and then also the general cost of the project, just so you can see whether it's going to be a smaller lift or a bigger lift. But some key action items that we identified in implementation include identifying which action items are possible for in the near term, which we're considering within the next year. And then prioritizing any action items for midterm and long-term implementation. So again, looking further into the future for planning for any programs that might be longer development, larger infrastructure projects, et cetera. Evaluating city staffing and allocating resources, city capacity and allocating resources accordingly. Some of the action items identify staff time as a need for support. So really looking at staff and resources across the city and the availability. And then additionally, identifying and securing external funding where available. Some of these are very budget intensive. So looking to opportunities through state funding, other local agencies, rebate programs to help support. And then lastly, something that we heard often at the community engagement meetings was wanting more insight, transparency, wanting to know what the city's doing around climate action plan. Community is very passionate, so routinely reporting on progress through updating the emissions inventories and public communications would also be a very critical step. And that is the conclusion of my presentation, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cassidy. I'll say this. Now we'll receive questions from the Planning Commission, but first I wanted to make a comment. I really appreciated the slide where you sort of incorporated the community's own input into the CAP. That's really nice to see, and that picture or that slide speaks volumes, so thank you for that. That's awesome. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. Very thorough, very great. And one of the questions I started writing is, the updates, and I think you answered it really well here. Is the updates going to be done on a quarterly basis when you guys are updating us on kind of how the process is happening from your short-term goals to long-term goals?
Ken, is that maybe a question you want to take?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner Oliveros. Probably not quarterly. That would be a little too quick of a turnaround for staff. I think we'd probably be looking at annual or biannual updates.
And I I actually attended both of those workshops, and I think you did an excellent job of translating all of the concerns that I noted. So thank you for your report and for your actions.
Thank you. I thought you looked familiar.
I think you might have been one of the pictures too, right?
Yes.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing. I do not have any public comment cards that have been submitted for this item. Otherwise, I'd call upon them. And I don't see anybody in the process of filling one out either. So if it's okay, I will close. Thank you, Ms. Cassidy.
Thank you very much.
Close the public hearing and call for deliberation. All right, would any commissioner like to make a motion to adopt the resolution?
I would like to move to adopt the resolution.
I second that.
I have a first and a second, therefore I will call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. No opposed or abstentions. The motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have item 4.2, Cypress Ranch Subdivision, 9557 Design Review, DR 25-01, FDP 25-01. Mr. Gorman.
Thank you so much, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners for the chance to present tonight. Give me one moment just to confirm that I'm streaming the presentation. I'll be right with you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. So tonight we're taking a look at Cypress Ranch, formerly the Burroughs Project. It's subdivision 9557. Tonight's application is design review and a final development plan. And I'm Evan Gorman. I'm associate planner for the city. First, we want to get a lay of the land, what area of town we're talking about tonight. And we're on the east side of town. We're on East Cypress, there where that star is. And let's get you a closer look. Here's the vicinity map. We're looking towards the northwest. The project site is outlined in that orange. We see that it's along East Cypress Road. To the right there is Jersey Island Road, and then to the top of the image is Knightson Avenue. So this project is between the intersection of Knightson Avenue and East Cypress Road and East Cypress Road and Jersey Island Road. For some background on the Burroughs project, this was originally approved by the City Council on May 25th, 2021, through tentative map 9557, and through the approval of a mitigated negative declaration, and that allowed a 3-year approval, a 3-year entitlement. Then on July 9th, 2024, the City Council granted a 6-year extension to the map as the developer worked through the final map process with our engineering team. And so this project has been approved. And tonight we're looking at the finer details of the development. For tonight's application, so the name for this project is Cypress Ranch. They've submitted an amended development plan, and when you get into neighborhoods and the different plans, this is exactly where a planner will get tripped up public speaking. So I'm going to look at my notes for this one. But a final development plan, that's an exhibit approved with a rezone to plan unit development. So in zoning, you can go with one of the set zoning districts in a city, and those have set development standards. For a larger plot of land, that can get pretty monotonous. And so a lot of large developments will go with planned unit development for their zoning. And that means you do kind of a custom zoning for the district. And the downside, not really the downside, but as a part of that, you have to show a plan that shows where each home is going and the setbacks. And we confirm that it has some variety to it that is plotted in a nice way because it doesn't follow our typical development standards. It can generally, but here it's custom. When they approved the original development, they set some development standards that were not as detailed as this. They were just one page. They had some conceptual home facades and development standards, and you could tell that whoever was going to develop this was going to need to flesh it out. And so here, that's what this is. They're submitting an amended final development plan that shows exactly where each home is plotted. There's setbacks for us to review, and we get a lot more detail on this development, and that's one of the aspects we're reviewing tonight. And so for that long-winded explanation, if we look at this slide, we have a breakdown in the home plans, and they have colors there, and I'll go into more detail. We have the development standards, the minimum setbacks there in the bottom left for each of the average lot sizes. And then there on the right, I've pieced together the pages of the final development plan that show how the homes are plotted, and we'll take a closer look at that. The other part of this application tonight are the home plans. We're looking at the design of the homes. There are 7 plans here, and I'll just take a moment so that you can take those in before I go on to the next slide. And then this is just showing these home plans. They have different color schemes, different architectural schemes, and I'll get into that. So one of those homes won't always look just like that. Here's a table summarizing the 7 plans. They range in square footage from roughly 1,400 square feet to 2,566. They all have 2-car garages, 2 to 3 bathrooms, and 3 to 5 bedrooms, depending on which plan. 2 of the 7 plans are 1-story, making up over 20% of the homes, which I don't want to spoil later on, but that meets the standard of ours. All right, it's broken up into 2 neighborhoods. The Landing are these 3 plans, and those are in the shades of blue and in gray, and those are plotted in the western side of the development. And let me just see, I don't want to miss anything. In total, there's 191 single-family homes as part of this development. And the Landing are the smaller lots of the development. They're on average roughly, they're just over 3,000 square feet typically. The other neighborhood of the 2 is the Meadows, and the Meadows uses these 4 floor plans here. 2 of them are the 1-story like we mentioned, and those are plotted on the plan in the shades of pink, purple, and yellow. I'll give you a moment to look at that. All right, and then each of the plans can come in 3 different architectural styles. We have Spanish Eclectic, Craftsman, and Prairie. And so that is one home plan right there in those 3 different varieties. And then for us, in order to get approved, that isn't enough variety. So you have to have additional color schemes. So the 3 in the top left, those are to go with the Spanish. Those are possible color schemes. Then the Craftsman's in the middle, and then in the bottom left is the Prairie. And so that way we get, I believe, planners aren't the best at math, but I'm getting about 63 different varieties there. Now that we've looked at the application, staff provides an analysis with every application, most everyone, and definitely this one tonight. For our analysis, we found the proposed plans, so we analyzed them for consistency with the adopted City of Oakley residential guidelines. We have to make sure the plans conform to that before we recommend it to you. Since the vesting tentative map is already approved, staff have focused this analysis on home design, home plotting, and landscaping. Certain things were already taken a look at in 2021 when it was approved, and so we haven't looked at those items. Those are already reviewed by the City Council. For our analysis, the proposed elevations are consistent with the city's residential design guidelines as they demonstrate a coherent architectural style across each plan. We found that each plan offers 3 distinct styles. We ask that in our city's design guidelines. Exterior materials, they wrap appropriately around building corners. There's some variety to where the 2 stories meet each other. There's projecting first floor elements. There's articulated facades that reduce the visual mass. There's several models include prominent entry porches that enhance the streetscape. We're always looking for more of those, and that's set out in our design guidelines. Roof forms and tile types vary by style, and each elevation uses a limited palette of muted earth tone colors with no more than 3 cladding materials, and again outlined by the city's design guidelines. The homes, when we look at the final development plan, because they're amending it, we have to make sure that complies as well. We found that that's also consistent. Front yard setbacks have been intentionally varied. They're not all the same, and that's to create some visual interest. Otherwise, you get a wall of homes at the same front setback distance. The plan also includes a minimum of 20% single-story homes, which is what our guidelines ask for. Rear setbacks along major roadways have also been varied, which I honestly hadn't thought about, even though I drive down East Cypress all the time, that you don't want a wall along East Cypress as well. And so taking a closer look at that, each of the homes is varied there at the rear. And then another thing we had to look at is some of the cul-de-sacs have been slightly modified. And so we went through the history of that to make sure that those modifications were taking place consistent with the Subdivision Map Act. We found that's the case, and then we also need to make a finding that the amended final development plan is consistent with the original one in that way, and we found it is consistent. So that was an important part of reviewing this project. All right, now into environmental review. So the proposal for home designs and site design elements of the subdivision fall within the scope of the original subdivision's California Environmental Quality Act CEQA analysis. Subdivision 9557 was analyzed through an initial study and a mitigated negative declaration, which was prepared and dated April 9th, 2021. No further environmental analysis is required. So again, that was handled previously with that previous approval, and this falls into that. Finally, staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving Cypress Ranch Subdivision 9557 design review as conditioned. As your staff, I can answer some questions you have if you have any. I also have the KB Homes representative, Megan Stover, here, who can try and answer any questions you have. And finally, I know some folks came in late, so I just want to reiterate the chair's announcement that there's speaker cards in the lobby should someone need it, and I appreciate the chance to present.
Thank you, Mr. Gorman. Are there any questions from the Planning Commission?
Thank you so much. I did ask some questions to the staff earlier this week, and they were all answered, so thank you very much. And I did drive through today just to kind of check out the space, and it's, just kind of getting a visual, so really appreciate you providing this analysis.
Any other questions or comments from the Planning Commission? No? Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing. I do not have any public speaker cards submitted for this item. I don't see anybody finishing one up or anything like that. With that said, I will close the public hearing and call for deliberation. How do we feel about this? Okay, let's see. Would any commissioner like to make a motion to adopt the resolution as presented?
I motion to move forward with the resolution.
I have a first.
Second.
First and a second, therefore I will call for a vote. All in favor of adopting the resolution as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. No opposed or abstentions. The motion passes unanimously. Therefore, we move on to item 5, or the regular calendar, item 5.1, which is to adopt the resolution appointing a Planning Commission representative and alternate to the Transplant Committee, Mr. Ken Strelo.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Vice Chair, other members of the Commission. So the Oakley Planning Commission has an appointed planning commissioner that serves on the Transplant Committee. Right now, that is Vice Chair Leonard Price. And there is also an alternate, which is Chair Diego Verduzco. And that term had previously expired. So we're coming back to the Planning Commission for this action again. And the way this works is there's a city council member and a planning commissioner for each of the representative cities that are on this. And I think there's 2 members from the county. And they serve for 2-year terms. So it's up to the planning commission to nominate and/or second and choose who they would like to serve as the representative and the alternate. And what I did is in the staff report, I provided a list of the current planning commissioners and their terms, if that is of interest. I mean, obviously, there's 3 terms that expire this year, and then the 2 new members run through 2029. So if there were to be committee members, or I'm sorry, commissioners that were elected that were in the 2025 term expirations, there may be a requirement that we come back to fulfill those roles at a later date. But that's about it for my report. What I would recommend is that you discuss who may want or not want to serve on this committee. And just so you're aware, the next meeting is Thursday. And I believe Commissioner Price is unable to attend. But the next meeting is this Thursday evening on Wilbur Avenue. I think it's 801 Wilbur Avenue in the city of Antioch. So whoever is selected as the main representative may be requested to attend that meeting Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strelo. Do any commissioners have questions of staff about this role?
What exactly is encompassed with the role, within the role?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What exactly is encompassed within the role of serving on this commission?
Yeah, so the Transplant Committee, it's related mostly to transportation, right? I haven't been to the meetings. Perhaps Commissioner Price, could you add some context to the role you've been serving?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's made up of the 5 cities out here, both a representative from the City Council and the Planning Commission. And you get to see what's going on in the county. It's very informative. It meets like once a month, and it's normally, we meet on Tuesday, that one's on Thursday. And it's down at Tri-Delta Transit. It's not a very long meeting. The agenda is real thick, but it's usually something that they go through really quick, and it gives you some insight on what's going on with the plans, not just here, but throughout the county. And it's not a big time thing on you. You just need to be at the meetings like once a month. And it's, like I say, it's really interesting. And to be honest, about half the meetings they cancel, so you really don't have that many that you wind up going to.
Well, thank you.
Is there an option to attend online, or is it just in person?
Yeah, this committee is in person at 6:30 p.m. on the second Thursday of each month. And it's right down there on Wilbur Avenue in the city of Antioch.
Can we make recommendations on who we would like to vote for?
You guys can have at it, sure.
Because I love to vote for Carrie. Because I think both of us are the only ones really, right? Because everyone else is their time is expiring. It's really, right?
You can trade off.
Oh, we can trade off?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, as long as there's somebody from the council and the alternate or the regular member. It's good to be there because what's going on in the meetings is, there's a lot of it carries over. But yeah, I would recommend it's a good way to get exposed to what's going on outside of the city.
That's interesting.
Okay. So the question was if we can alternate. So you mentioned we could alternate.
Yes, well, if something's coming up and you can't be at the meeting, like Diego, I would call him and tell him I can't make that meeting. But it's not that often. I probably made most of the meetings that went on, and it's a good way to learn what's going on outside of the city here.
So with that said, if there are no more questions, or does anybody have questions? I would like to nominate Commissioner Harvey, if that's okay,
I am interested.
as the primary.
This Thursday, I cannot actually be there, though. I will be in state. But after that, I will be. So the alternate would be.
At 6:30, you said?
So I nominate Commissioner Harvey as the primary and Commissioner Oliveros as the alternate. Would any commissioner prefer to discuss the item or make a motion?
I don't.
A motion.
I have a first.
I'll second it.
I have a first and a second, therefore I will call for a vote. All in favor of the proposal of having Commissioner Harvey and Commissioner Oliveros as the transplant representatives, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. No opposed or abstention, the motion passes. Now we move on to reports. Are there any reports from staff members?
The only report I have is just to remind the commission, the next planning commission meeting is scheduled for June 3rd.
All right, item 6.2, Planning Commission report. Are there any reports from any commissioner?
Report on the last transplant meeting was canceled.
Everything else I think we covered with earlier.
Any requests for future agendas?
Not at this time.
All right, there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.